I want to bring on Judge Alexander Williams, who I wanted to save to last because, you've been so involved in the issue of voting and redistricting. What do you think about those young folks, Judge Williams?
Well, it's so encouraging that we have the next generation that's really informed and ready to carry that torch. So I really appreciate just hearing them and understanding where they are. That was great.
I thought so as well. Now I know you're native Washingtonian, graduate of, you said Roosevelt High School?
Yeah, I'm a rough rider.
Rough Rider. All right. All right. But also, you taught, remember, didn't take classes, but remember you at Howard Law School when I was there. And you've had quite a career yourself. And maybe you could just tell us a little bit about that in addition to the AW Center at the University of Maryland.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Barnes. So just briefly, I'm a native Washingtonian and went to Howard and then came out, went to Prince George's County, which was good to me. And I ended up running for the state's attorney's office, became the first black elected countywide to the state's attorney's office, went 2 terms, and then was nominated by President Clinton to serve on the federal bench, which I did for about 20 years. And I've been involved in a lot of things since I've left. But again, native Washingtonian, and remember your father so well. He had me on his radio programs many times. So I'm just grateful for what you've done with the Washington Informer and the legacy that you have continued on from your father.
Well, I have folks like you to thank because you put that stamp on me. So you just like those young people, you keep us encouraged. So so the AW Center at the University of Maryland, what is that?
Yeah, it's a policy center that I created after I retired. It deals with social justice issues. I focus on challenges that the disadvantaged and underserved communities have. And as soon as I got out and started it, the University of Maryland then asked me to come and join their Department of African American Studies. And so we deal with social justice issues such as helping the reentry to remove barriers. We deal with young people and diversionary programs. Criminal justice reform, as you know, Ms. Barnes, is my passion. I taught criminal law and criminal procedure at Howard. So I've spoken about mandatory minimum sentences and other kinds of reforms that's necessary in the criminal justice arena. But that's what I do. That's my full-time job over there, and very, very satisfied with what we're doing in the area of social justice.
So I know redistricting now is on your plate as well. And right here, I mean, I'm in DC and Ward 8. Our boundaries have expanded in certain areas. People are now trying to figure out how it's going to work, how to incorporate other parts of the city that weren't originally a part of a district, how that's going to work, the political landscape and all that. Talk to us about how what redistricting means and the impact that it has on communities.
Yeah, redistricting is a process that takes place every 10 years once you've had a census. There's been population shifts. Some communities have lost, some have gained, and you want to make sure that the lines are equally allocated so that everybody's vote is the same. And so in the District of Columbia, as well as other counties and municipalities, they have to redistrict and redraw the lines, and all the states have to do it, all 50 states, based on the count from the Census Bureau that takes place every 10 years. Very contentious process. As you know, Ms. Bonds are in hill on the hill. They fight like cats and dogs over almost every issue, and redistricting is such a very challenging issue all over the country, including in DC. And as far as the citizens of Washington are concerned, they want to make sure that they get people who come to Congress who are fair, who are sensitive, who understand the need to reform. And so of the 435 people who make up Congress in the House, the district has an interest because you have issues such as a home rule and other kinds of issues that affect elect the citizens here, and you want to make sure that the 435 people that come in are fair-minded and they've been elected based on fair lines that have been drawn in the various states.
And how do they draw those lines, Judge Williams? Because, for example, and again, I keep looking locally, but this is a national conversation. But when a community has to bring in you're splitting it up, you're dividing so that the numbers, right? Let's talk about the criteria. One, you have to have sort of a balance in the number of, is it residents or voters?
Yeah, it's a residence. Yes.
Okay. Okay. And then what about a racial balance? Is that important or not?
Yeah, it is. There's something called the Voters' Rights Act, and when you're drawing the lines, you can't dilute the minority vote, the African American vote, the Hispanic vote. They have to have a fair opportunity. And one of the tricks that people have had across the years to dilute that vote is what they call packing or cracking. And packing simply is to shove all the minorities into one district when they could possibly have had 2 or 3 congressmen, but you put them all in one. That's called packing. And then cracking is splitting them up in little pieces so they don't have any real power from that standpoint. So the Voter Rights Act precludes all of that. And also today we're seeing more partisan gerrymandering, which is another issue that people have to deal with.
And so that means that, if you, well, we don't have that much of that issue here in the district because it's a predominantly Democratic city. But if there was more of a balance, how would gerrymandering sort of play itself out?
Yeah. If obviously in the District of Columbia is heavily a Democratic, you don't have a real competitive partisan system of Republicans and Democrats and independents. But in other states, it's more of a problem because the party that's in control tries to draw lines to entrench themselves and also to make sure that it's easy for their party to get votes and so forth. In the District of Columbia, again, they are affected because they want to make sure that people who come here who vote on legislation that affects them are not victims of partisan gerrymandering and so forth. And as you know, Ms. Bond, the Supreme Court has punted on the area of partisan gerrymandering. They have not taken the case up. They have not found that to be a constitutional violation at this point. So what's happening is that in all of these partisan gerrymandering states like Ohio and other places, there's a state constitution and the state delegation rights, and there's a lot of litigation taking place in the various states to challenge these lines to make sure that the other party gets a fair opportunity to get elected.
Let's look at the state of Maryland. Because to me, I mean, right now you're looking at, a state. I'm not sure what the political breakdown is there, but I know you have a large Democratic area of Democrats in Prince George's County, possibly in Baltimore, the urban areas. You still have a Republican governor who's won more than one term. So how does it play out, or redistricting? How's it playing out in Maryland?
Yeah, interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that. A governor appointed me as co-chair of the Redistricting Commission, the Maryland Citizens Redistricting Commission. So we just filed our report, and if you look on my website, Judge Alexander Williams Center .edu.com, you'll see our report there. But Maryland has over 6 million people, which gives them, according to the census, about 8 congressional seats. And of course, it's a heavily Democratic population and a state right now. It's a blue state. And right now, you have 7 Democrats and 1 Republican. So they're in the process of adopting lines and so forth. And in Maryland, every congressional district will be a little over 600,000 people. And you would think that most, in theory, you would like to have 8 little equal blocks, but it just doesn't happen that way because Maryland is a strange shaped state. It goes all the way to Western Maryland, almost toward Pennsylvania and West Virginia, and then it goes to the Eastern Shore across the Bay Bridge down Southern Maryland, and then you have Central Maryland. So the lines are very unique and strange sometimes. And there's lawsuits right now about basically the Republican Party that are challenging the lines that have been drawn by the Democratic Party.
Outside of the challenges between the politicians themselves, or the folks like yourself who work on these commissions, the everyday voters, I mean, do you think that they even know what's going on, or are they impacted until election day when they realize their poll may have changed? How are they impacted?
Yeah, and Ms. Bonds, I'm so glad you asked that question. And my point, and I've been speaking on a number of different shows and at churches and other communities. We have to understand this process of redistricting that takes place every 10 years. We can't shut our eyes. We've got to make sure that we know where the lines are being drawn, who's drawn it. Some states have legislators drawing it, other states have independent commissions, but we've got to understand what this process is and make sure that these lines are fair, they're compact, they bring in people of various interests, and we also recognize the shifts in population. In Maryland, as you know, Baltimore City lost population, so they've got to look elsewhere to make 700,000 people. And of course, in Prince George's County, it's almost 1 million people. So we have to be separated in 2 or possibly 3 different districts.
Interesting. And lastly, when it comes to the Voting Rights Act that did not pass in the Senate, was there anything in that act that that will be impacted that will impact redistricting here or any place in the country?
Yeah, you had 2 acts that were pending there. You had the Freedom to Vote Act, and then you had the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. And both of those pieces of act were vital. I'm so sorry they didn't get the numbers to pass it, but it would have returned a lot of the requirements under the 1965 Voting Rights Act that required the Justice Department to sign off on certain districts in certain states. But it also will have made a national rule for voting by mail, early voting, and other kinds of things that have been taken away by these various ordinances and bills and legislation in other states that has restricted the right of people to vote. It's a dangerous thing, but unfortunately, neither bill passed, and we just have to hope that the Congress will keep fighting so that we can get the proper legislation.
I agree, and after hearing those young people a few minutes ago, those students, we know that there will continue to be a fight forever to protect the right to vote for Americans all across this country. That's what I heard from them.
Absolutely.
All right, Judge Williams, thank you so very much for being with us, for helping us to understand the redistricting process and why we need to pay close attention to how these lines are being drawn. And we welcome you back anytime.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes, and congratulations to you and all you're doing with the Washington Informer. I read that paper every week. I'll tell you that now.
All right. That's a good thing. I appreciate that.
All right.
All righty.